Welcome everyone to Coach in this session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I'll be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about how we can optimize our performance in our body. Because if we think about it, are we being optimal in our days? And many people leave some energy in the tank, they leave some juice on the table the day before when they could have pushed a little bit more. So what we're trying to do is get every bit of our desires, every bit of our enthusiasm, our motivation out that given day, because the next day we're going to have that renewed. So we want to be more productive. We want to be more creative in our days because we understand that the end goal is going to be our most desired place where we want. So it's not going to be so much about looking at the destination and us trying to get there very quickly, but us seeing what is possible in our life today. And today we're going to be talking with a performance coach, Eric Dagati, and he's going to help break down how performance is, how our body is, and what type of important things that we need to be aware of. Because if we think about awareness in our consciousness, we sometimes just kind of take what the world gives us and we kind of go with the flow rather than figuring out a plan, figuring out what are going to be the next steps. Because yes, as we grow up, things are going to change. So we want to make sure that we are not just going with time with the world, but we're going with what we're capable of each and every day. So let's get into that interview with Eric and myself. Welcome, Eric Dagati, to Coach in the Session. You are the founder of One Human Performance. You are a performance coach. I can go on and tell the world of all the things you have done, but in your own words, please tell the world what you do and how you help.
Thank you, Michael. So pleasure to be here. Thanks for taking the time with me. So I've spent the last 24 years plus helping people perform their best. And that ranges from weekend warriors all the way out to professional athletes and teams, as well as being able to be an instructor for fitness education and training education for other trainers, strength coaches, physical therapists, and athletic trainers around the world, both being a lead instructor for functional movement systems, as well as teaching my own curriculum.
Are you familiar with the man named David Goggins?
Of course I am. Yes, I've read his book and I've actually came across him first through Jesse Isler's book, which is Living with a SEAL.
Yeah. And what he talks about in the books is about like being flexible. Like I know there's one point in the book where he was like, I couldn't even move and he wasn't flexible. And he went to go see someone like yourself where he's like, yeah, your movement is all messed up and it's going to take like 2 years for you to get back. Can we talk about the process of helping people regain their mobility after they lost it?
Yeah. And so the first thing you need to do is really have a good diagnostic or some type of assessment to figure out, did they actually lose it? Because sometimes what's happened is you have this mobility restriction. Like, let's say you can't touch your toes and you automatically assume this is a tight part somewhere, right? And we'll go blame the hamstrings. If my hamstrings are too tight, that's why I can't touch my toes. Well, there's other reasons why you can't touch your toes. And there could be number one, most important thing is there could be pain, and it's a protective mechanism and you're guarding that range of motion. And so we have to figure out if there's pain, then we dive even deeper to say, is this pain something that's driven from a musculoskeletal issue, or is it pain because you actually have a medical issue, right? Because I've had people come in with low back pain because parts that are tight and parts that are weak, and it's a musculoskeletal situation. Or I've had people come with low back pain that they later found out was a cancerous tumor, right? That it was something else that we weren't going to do anything about in terms of on the fitness side of things. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is sometimes we won't allow ourselves to go in certain positions and postures and shapes because we don't have stability. And your body is smarter than us sometimes. And it's a protective mechanism that you have these receptors in your tendons and in your muscles that sense length and tension. And if it's sensing you're going into a place that you don't think you can get out of or that's unsafe, it'll put the brakes on. And so those tight hamstrings are tight for a reason. And if we go and just stretch them, we actually may make you worse. We may put you in an unsafe position because they were the only things saving you from going into a really bad position. So that's the first thing, is figure out, is it really tight in the first place? And then from there, then you have to figure out, why is it there, and where is it specifically showing up? So let's keep going with the hamstrings. Is that if I test you and I put you through a full screen of different movement patterns, right? And you can go to a full deep squat, you can get into a lunge, but then when I ask you to hinge your hips and touch your toes, then all of a sudden that's where the restriction shows up. Well, if you truly had stiff hamstrings or a stiff tissue somewhere, it probably is going to show up in a bunch of these tests. But if it only shows up in one test, now you have a pattern problem, right? You have a flexion problem. You don't necessarily have a tight hamstring because that tight hamstring is not showing up everywhere. So then I have to break that down into a pattern. If I see it as a more global thing where every time I put you in a different position, you get restricted and you can't extend your hips, well, then you may really have a tight hip flexor or something like that. And then we can go proceed appropriately. So first thing is being a detective and figure out answering all these questions first, because if I just go blindly giving you a bunch of stretches, I could actually make you worse. So there's an analogy I use, Michael, and what it is it's kind of like tuning a guitar, right? If you take the greatest guitarists in the world and you put them up on stage with an out-of-tune guitar, their skill is diminished. They don't sound all that great anymore. By the same token, if you give me the most finely tuned guitar in the world, I'm never going to be Jimmy Page or Clapton or a great guitarist because I don't have that skill. So the first thing you got to do is make sure that you have everything at your disposal, all those things tuned. And so when you go and tune a guitar, you don't just tighten all the strings. You don't just loosen all the strings. You have to listen to each one. And there's people who are part of the road crew that before they go on stage, they listen to each one. And sometimes it needs a little tightening. Sometimes you need a little bit more stability and control. Sometimes it needs a little bit of loosening and you need to tune it down. And that's where we need to add some more mobility. And then when we get into mobility, there's a bunch of different ways we can go about getting that. We can do it with a foam roller, a trigger point gun. We can do it with manual stretching. You can do it with different types of breathing techniques. You can do it a lot of different ways you can gain mobility. And finding the right tool for that is also a little bit of an art as well.
Just to kind of keep on with the guitar tuning as our example. Sometimes you might be playing guitar and you say, this kind of sounds off. And then you're like, all right, the strings are probably out of tune, but I'm going to keep on playing. How often do you see that people keep on with an ailment that they have, whether it be my knee hurts, but I'm not going to go see a doctor. I'm not going to go see a performance coach. I'm literally going to keep walking on my knee until I can't walk anymore. Using the analogy again about the guitar, they're going to keep on playing until the string breaks or the whole guitar busts, right? They don't take the time out to fix the small problem, and then eventually it turns into a bigger problem. How often do you see that? Or maybe even get into the realm of why do you think people wait until it's so bad versus doing mitigation in the beginning?
Unfortunately, you see it all the time. And so there's a lot of reasons why that happens. Sometimes they don't have, to use the guitar analogy, they don't have the ear to even know it, right? They don't even know that thing is off. And if there's a model called the 4 levels of competence that I usually explain to people, is that the first level is that you have what's called unconscious incompetence. Like you're screwed up and you don't even know it. And you thought you were healthy, and all of a sudden I put you through a battery of tests and you realize, wow, I can't even do a clean push-up, or I can't even rotate to the right. And all of a sudden now you create this awareness. That's that next level, is that conscious incompetence, where I kind of know I'm screwed up, but I don't know what to do about it. The third level is conscious competence, where I can kind of give you awareness to say, okay, well, if you can set your shoulder this way, or position your spine this way, or get your hips to do this, that's going to change all that. And that's not something that's going to be natural to you. When we can get that so it's ingrained and that's just part of your natural behaviors, that's when you get to unconscious competence. That's what we want to have. So the first thing is just most people don't have the awareness of it. They don't even realize that they're wearing out their knee every time they go for their 2-mile jog. The second reason is they just assume you're supposed to feel like crap. Like they assume that, after 40, things are supposed to hurt. They assume that, well, I'm a professional athlete or I'm an athlete, I'm supposed to feel like crap. Well, not necessarily. Or maybe they've never even felt good to know what it feels like to feel good. And that's one of the best things I can give my clients, especially tell my athletes, is to give you better awareness. So you actually know what it feels like to feel good. So you know when that guitar is out of tune. And then you go to the last reason, which is a very real reason, is you take someone like David Goggins, when the torture he put himself through, I would not recommend to anybody, nor do 99.9% of the world ever need to do, because he was trying to achieve a status of an elite special forces soldier that most of us couldn't even dream to imagine. And so he had a lot of stakes on the line, and that he got to a point where he was literally duct taping his lower leg because he had stress fractures. But that was his last chance, that if he didn't make it through he didn't make it through Bud's training at that point, they were not going to give him another chance. The stakes are way too high. And so if I'm dealing with professional athletes and it's like, look, it's my contract year. And if I go into that training room and tell them that, my hip's bugging me, I'm going to go in an MRI tube. And if they find something, that could affect my livelihood, my ability to put food on the table. And so that's a very real reason. Now, most people, as they're listening, that's not your reason. Like, don't keep going for your 5-mile jog if your knee's bugging. You find out why your knee's bugging.
I think it's a bit of stubbornness too, and it could be societal because, for example, when I was in college, I think I was still in college or I was just finishing up and I started my teaching career. I was training for a 5K marathon and I tweaked my leg or something, hamstring, whatever it was. I tweaked something. And so I said, I'm going to take a few days off. So I took 3 days off and I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. So I started training again, felt it immediately. And I was like, well, I'm still doing the 5K. I already signed up. And I did the 5K. And after the 5K, it's like I could barely walk. And then that formed into sciatica, which I had to deal with for 2 to 3 years. And I was like, man, I should have stopped at that point when I knew I should have stopped, but I kept on going. And then I just compounded what I did to my body. The body can be so fickle sometimes where it's like, we think we just, dinged it, but there's so much damage versus if we think of a car accident or something like that. If you hit the front bumper, you might see the front bumper smash in, but it pushes everything back too. So all the internal guts of the car, that's also damaged too. And I think many people don't see past their exterior, right? So they just try to put a Band-Aid on themselves where they say, okay, well, I'm going to take some Tylenol and I'll be good to go. Or I'm just going to put some ice on it and then I'll be good to go. That way of thinking, do you think that's kind of a generational thing, societal thing, or it's just human nature just to kind of say, okay, quick Band-Aid, keep on moving?
The human nature thing, there's two sides of it, but there is certainly an element of that no pain, no gain that we see, the commercials. Hey, don't let your pain stop you from doing what you want to do. Take these pills and you'll be fine. And, your pain is not an Advil deficiency. Your pain is a real thing trying to tell you something to stop doing whatever you're doing. There's a segment in a course that I teach on how to design programs. And I teach this to trainers and strength coaches and physical therapists. And there's a section where I talk about the cost of training, and everything we do has a certain associated cost to it. Not always are those costs bad. There's metabolic costs. If you go out for your run, you're going to burn a certain amount of calories. And if I'm looking to lose weight, that's a great thing, right? But there are other costs like structural costs. So if you go out and run and you don't have the mobility to properly run, something is going to get caught in that crossfire. And it could be in your case, it might be your knee or your hamstring or your hip or something like that. And understand that, okay, we were able to burn calories, we're able to get a physiological effect of better conditioning, but at the cost of my knee. And so you go back and you tell your story and say, okay, well, I don't want to give up that $75 registration fee, right? And if I said to you, all right, I got a deal for you, Michael, for $75, you're going to get to run this race, but for the next 6 months, you're going to be miserable. I got a deal for, did you take it? No. And so people don't understand how to kind of weigh out those costs. And part of designing a good training program is being able to measure out kind of what your personal budget is to see how you can, best use those costs. And that budget is something that changes every day. So I may have a program that I wrote for you that is the ideal program. We've done a complete assessment on you. We know your background. We know your goals. We know all of these things. And I wrote this really good program. And now all of a sudden you show up for the workout on Monday morning. And I found out, well, maybe you have a newborn at home and you got a lousy night's sleep, or you were at a dinner party and you had a couple drinks and you ate some really crappy food, or you're on a cross-country flight, or you rolled your ankle playing basketball, and the dynamics of us change. And so I have to adapt that programming somewhat to that. I can't just keep putting the pedal down, because that's not how training works. It's not a linear upgrade that you go up, because if that was the case, I'd be bench pressing 1,000 pounds and running a 3-minute mile. But it doesn't work. You challenge yourself, and basically your body says, oh my gosh, I don't know what you just did, but I'm going to have to come back a little bit stronger from that. And so it does this kind of undulating breakdown, recover type of thing. And you're only as good as your ability to recover in that budget of what you can allow yourself based on your sleep, your nutrition, your recoverability, your resilience. And so I'll kind of wrap it back around to the societal thing is there's another section of the course I talk about. We're at an interesting crossroads right now in our society where we have kind of two polar opposites that I'm seeing that are walking in the door. One is the fragile person, okay? And we've been on this path for a long time, and then the pandemic just really put the pedal down on it, and that we're becoming more and more of a fragile society. We don't move as much, we don't eat as well, we don't handle stress. We have more environmental stressors, we don't have mechanisms to deal with those stressors, and so we're becoming a very weakened species on one side of things. And then you compound that by you stick somebody in their living room in front of a laptop at a dining room table as their workstation. And the only time they move is to go get DoorDash, right? Mm-hmm. And then, so you have those people who are now very fragile, and it doesn't take much to break them, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't take much to have anything go wrong for their back to hurt, for their knee to hurt, because they're a very, very fragile organism. Now let's go to the opposite side of the spectrum. When I started doing this 20 plus years ago, I don't remember the obstacle course race business being a multi-million-dollar business. There wasn't CrossFit. There wasn't these boot camps and all these different things that are really extreme physical endeavors it's great to see people doing this. But because they're not always prepared for those things, because maybe they do sit at a laptop all day at their dining room table, they end up getting broken. Mm-hmm. Now, both of these people come in my door and they say, I have a fill in the blank issue, hamstring, low back, shoulder. They need very, very different course of action because they're coming in for very different reasons.
And I can imagine just being out maybe at, happy hour or something with your friends, and all of a sudden your friend says, yeah, I'm going to do Tough Mudder. And then, yeah, that'd be a great day. Everyone's drunk. It's like, yeah, let's do it. And then you sign up on your phone at the bar. And then before you know it, it's going to be the weekend of Tough Mudder. And you're like, what the heck did I get into? And you're not prepared. You didn't train. And when you run this race, you get hurt, or you really get an understanding of, wow, like I'm out of shape. And it's kind of like a wake up call. The wake up call can be a good thing. And if you got hurt, it's not necessarily a good thing. I find like around New Year's resolutions time, many people kind of remind themselves, oh yeah, I have to get in shape. I forgot about that. Or, oh yeah, I should start going to the gym, or I should get a personal trainer to help me along this path. They have this idea, but then they don't kind of go through with it all the way until the end. So they might start strong where they say, okay, 2-3 months, I'm going to get a performance coach, or I got my plan. I'm going to show up every single day. And then maybe one day they just fall in a habit saying, you know what, I'm just busy today with work. I'm not going to show up today. And then it just turns into a snowball effect, and they don't want to get back on, even though they have some knowledge of, I felt like crap. And now I'm just allowing myself to get back into that crap. Right. So it's kind of like they start, they stop, they start, they stop. And I, using me as an example, I did that when I was in high school. I was full throttle weightlifting, athletic guy. And then come college, I'm busy. A lot of classes, 18 credits. So I don't have much time to go to the gym as I used to. So I might go 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week. And I was going 5 times a week. And eventually, sometimes I'll get really busy and I'm not showing up at all that week. And then I'm like, okay, 3 months later, I'm like, I got to get back on. I get back on and I'm like, I'll never stop again. Guess what happened 6 months later? I stop again. It's kind of like that habitual thing. It's like I get busy. Life gets busy for me. And then I just say, well, what can I take away? Right. And then I say, I'm going to take away my fitness, because that's the easiest thing for me to take away, because it takes a lot of work for me to show up in the gym where I'm fighting my mind and I'm like, do I really want to go spend an hour in the gym right now? Because it's going to be an hour suck, because I know that. It's easy for me to say no. I would rather just take it easy, sit on the sofa, like you were saying, order DoorDash, have them come to me rather than me go to them, rather than me show up. Getting into that type of way of thinking, people can start something, like they can call you and they can say, hey, Eric, I want to get in shape, create a plan for me. How are ways that you motivate people to stay on track and to not allow their brain to win and stop?
There's 3 main factors. Is number one, is awareness, right? Is creating the awareness of how you got here, creating the awareness of what you need to do to get out of it, and engaging them in the process. If I just give you workouts and I'm going to count your repetitions and say, do this just because it's hard, there's no engagement in that process. And so you have to be engaged in that process. And so to do that, I have to make you aware of that so I can make you become independent. My goal as a coach is to become obsolete. And so I need to first create awareness of certain things to say, wow, if it's a matter of making you aware that, wow, I didn't realize that my sleep gets affected if I have a drink after this point in time, or I didn't realize that my brain function goes down if I eat certain types of foods, that I didn't realize the connection between certain things, that this is a holistic process. This is not just show up in the gym for an hour and then forget about it the next 23 hours. This is basically creating a new version of myself. And so the second piece of that is it's really just about habits, and it's about creating non-negotiable habits that this is just who Michael is, right? This is and so, you know, if someone was to introduce me and say, hey, Michael, meet my friend Eric, he's a trainer. And then you have this label that is whoever you are. Well, your label to yourself really is that deal of non-negotiable habits of this is just part of what I do. I always say that the best industry in the world is at doing this is the dental industry. Like no one has ever said, you know, I just don't have the time because I got to spend 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, brushing my teeth. And, you know, it's so time consuming. They just made you believe that this is something that you need to do in order to maintain your health. And it's the only thing we do proactively for our health. For the most part, right? Everything is reactionary. I'm going to take the pill after it hurts. I'm going to go see the doctor after I'm sick. This is the only thing proactive we do. And we take it on faith that this is what we need to do. And we don't think about it. It's just a non-negotiable habit. This is just part of my day. And if that becomes, hey, part of my day is I do 10 minutes of breathing or meditation, or I do 10 minutes of mobility work every day. And that's what I do every morning. That's a non-negotiable. And if that becomes part of of who you are and who your definition is to yourself, that then is going to be the key to this, right? It's not about just, I'm going to go to the gym and magic happens. And then I don't have to think about it the other 23 hours. And then the biggest part of all of it is your why, is why are you actually doing this? Like what is going to happen? And so if we get started together, the first thing I do is we kind of do a little bit of an interview. And I'm like a 4-year-old. I ask lots of questions and I ask why about 100 times, right? And until I can peel the onion back to say, okay, well, why are you here? Well, I want to lose weight. Well, why do you need to lose weight? Well, I want to look better. Well, what is that going to look like? You know, is it, if you didn't lose a pound, but you look the way you want to look, would you care? No, I guess not. Okay. So then how are we going to judge if you're actually where you're at? Well, I want to be able to fit into these jeans. Okay. Well, if you fit into those jeans, then what happens? Right. And so what can you now do that you couldn't do before? Well, I can go out and then once you can start to see what the true attachment is, there's your why. And that's that's what's going to always get you out of bed and not hit snooze. Right. That's going to get you to order the salad instead of the cheese fries. Is you got to look at your why and say, why am I doing this? And if your why is strong enough, then it's easier to make those decisions. And combining that with the awareness piece is understanding that, you know what, there are some times that it's okay to have the French fries. It's not the end of the world, right? That this is not a one-shot deal, right? I always say this is a decision you have to make every day. Getting in shape is an everyday decision. And so it's not like buying a car or a laptop computer where I buy it and it's mine. You don't get in shape and then you're in shape, you're in the club, right? You're in the door. And no, it doesn't work that way. You have to kind of earn it every day. And so with that, I've never had an athlete that achieved at a high level that said, you know, it was that one workout I did in 2017 that got me here, right? It was, I got up every morning in the mornings that I didn't want to get up and I worked out. And the workouts that are generally the ones that are going to create the greatest value for you are the ones that you didn't feel like doing.
Yeah, the idea of every day you have to show up. It's not just a destination. One day I'm going to be fit. And I look in the mirror and say, well, I'm fit and I can stop. And sometimes people say, well, once I give myself this goal weight, right? I get to my goal weight, let's say is 200 pounds, right? So, and I'm 250. So I'm 250 and I'm trying to get to 200 pounds. Once I get to 200, perfect. I got to my goal weight. My goal is completed. I can live my life again. But we're living wrong. We're going out, McDonald's, ice cream, cakes, all that stuff. Before we know it, we're back at 250. We weren't conscious, or we weren't aware is big, right? We weren't aware, that awareness of, okay, are we maintaining our goal? And sometimes people give themselves a goal or a task, they complete it, they get there, and then that's it. It's kind of like a relationship where they say, well, I got the girl, and then they don't do what is needed to keep the girl, right? So divorce is rampant. Why? Why? Because they didn't do communication. They stopped buying her flowers, taking her out. All of those things are compound effects that eventually she's going to like say like, well, what's the point, right? I'm not happy in this relationship because I just feel like you're just not appreciating me. So that sense of appreciation. And I think we as people sometimes lose that appreciation until it's lost, where I'm going to appreciate my body more when I recover from an illness or an injury versus if I was just already feeling normal. Perfect example. If the common cold comes your way, I can't breathe, I can't talk, I feel miserable, I'm dying. And then as soon as you feel better, well, I'm back to normal, right? You're not thinking about all that suffering that you went through, because when you were sick, you were thinking the only thing I want right now is to feel normal, to get back to where I was so I can breathe again, so I can continue living my regular life. Now, that's one way of thinking. But then at the same time, why did you get sick? Looking even deeper for the reason, and then trying to mitigate that so it doesn't happen consistently in your life. Now, of course, the common cold is going to come your way, especially if you have children. They're going to be going off to school, bringing back who knows what. So you're going to be dealing with all of that. But then you also want to make sure you're healthy. So being aware of the type of person you are, what you're putting into your body, being conscious, and then, of course, knowing your why. How healthy do you want to be? What do you want to be able to do? And I tell my father, because he's getting up there in age, I say, hey, you're going to have grandkids. Are you going to be able to keep up with them? And he's like, yeah, you're right. So he's on the floor doing push-ups now, and he's doing walking around blocks. So he's being more active than if I didn't say that to him, because he was just kind of going on, well, I'm getting older. So he was using that excuse as I'm getting older. So whatever comes my way is just what age is. And what you said, earlier, it's not so much about age. It's about, well, what do we want in our life, right? Being aware of what we would like to have. And if something's wrong, let's fix it before it becomes an issue. So what I want from you is a few final words. It could be talking about what I just said, or maybe any last blurbs that you would like to say. And then please tell people where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah. And that's awesome stuff. So one of the cool things, we talk about some of the detrimental things and that we get in our modern society. There are also some good things if you can really look and pay attention to it, in that you're seeing at the highest levels of sports. You're seeing people like Tom Brady at 44, who's, arguably the best quarterback in football. You're seeing people who are performing, you look at baseball, you look at what Ichiro was able to do into his 40s. You see what people are, they're redefining what certain age markers really look like and can be. And then I'm seeing it firsthand with everyday people. I had two clients that I saw this morning. They're both in their 60s. One is a black belt in Taekwondo. The other one is a competitive tennis player. And he likes to brag how he goes out and beats people 30, 40 years younger than him on a regular basis. I think actually today he did, over the course of his, the course of a 45-minute session, not all in one, all in a row, but of course, 45-minute session, he did 20 chin-ups at 65 years old, right? Where most people wouldn't think like that's something is safe to do, but absolutely is. He's prepared himself to this point. He didn't start at that, but we've worked up to that ability. So we're just going to keep pushing it until nature tells me that it's not there, right? Mm-hmm. So redefining what your expectations are is something that we're seeing. That's why sports are being played at such a dramatically higher level right now, because we keep getting better at figuring out ways that we can utilize and leverage nature and science together to optimize our bodies, to really be able to do things that we didn't think were possible, even 10 years ago. And so not creating these self-limiting beliefs, whether it's your age, whether it's, hey, well, I was never an athlete as a kid, or I'm the third string kid on my team. That's just who I am. Well, you can recreate who you are every day. And it's pretty impactful what you can do with the right, recovery mechanisms of sleep and nutrition and the right training mechanisms and knowing how to go about challenging yourself in the right way and managing all those stressors to optimize yourself. So if anybody has any questions, the best way to get me is on my website, which is just my name, Eric Dagati, EricDagati.com. Since I do a lot of public speaking, I created something right on the homepage called Ask Eric. And so if you have a question, and so it's tomorrow, and Mike will be like, oh, I should have asked him about, is foam rolling good? What about what can I do to strengthen my rotator cuff? Shoot me a question right on there. It goes right to my email, and I'll get back to you with an answer. The reason why I did that is if I made enough of an impact, whether it's speaking with you on this podcast or going out and speaking at a workshop, that you took the time, wrote down the website, went to my website and asked the question, that means I did my job. All right. Mm-hmm. And so that way I was able to pay it forward as far as what I've been able to learn and accumulate from working with some of the top, people in their field over the last 24 plus years. So that's my little tidbit and what I can share if anybody has any questions moving forward.
And I will have your website in the show notes. So if anyone's driving, the website will be there so you can click it later and you can go ask him any questions if you have, or if you're interested in knowing the process, he's going to be able to walk you through that. Or if you finally say, you know what, I want to begin to optimize myself, my mind, my body, then he's going to be the person. He's going to be the guy that you're going to want on your side. Because, just from speaking with him today, I can tell he cares about his clients and he wants you to be in a good place. And it might not be a quick process where you wake up the next day and you're all better, but you're going to be in good care, because if he sees something wrong, he's not going to send you down that wrong path. And having a good guide like Eric, he's going to be there saying, hey, let's go this way. Let's slow down. Let's speed up, because he's going to be able to challenge you. He's going to see where you need to push, and what better time than to push than right now. Thank you so much, Eric, for coming on, speaking with me, speaking with the audience. Huge delight, huge pleasure. And you're so knowledgeable about what you do.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. And you and your dad, keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank my guest again, Eric Dagati, for coming on, speaking everything about performance coaching and helping us get a better understanding of what he does and how he can help you. And what I would love from you, if you made it all the way to the end of this episode, is to share this link with someone who you love and you care. And that's because I want them to understand that they can be aware of how their body is. What do they need to do? What type of improvements do they need to make? Because if you truly love someone, wouldn't you want them to live a long, healthy life? Because if we keep going down the path we're going to be living, we're going to be cutting our years, maybe 5-6 years short. And you might say, well, if it happens, it happens. That's going to be a negative type of mindset, a fixed type of mindset. Well, let's think about what we could do in those 5 or 6 years that are going to be more profound, that are going to help create more meaning in our life. And like I said, if you truly love someone, you wouldn't want to see them go. So how can we help them be here longer with us, to create more moments and memories with us? And the best way to do that is to help them become aware, help them become conscious of their health, their fitness level, and then what they're putting forward in their life. So like, comment, subscribe, share this video and their audio with the idea that you're helping those people that you're sharing it with live a longer and more fuller life. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach here in Austin, Texas. If you have any questions, you can email me, coachingasession@gmail.com, and I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching a Session. Until then, everyone, take care.